Hi, Gary.
Good morning, Don.
Good
Hello, how are
morning.
you?
I'm good, thanks.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Guess what I'm doing today? I'm making bagels. Not as
Really?
we speak. Yes.
You're so
my
good at
dough
that.
is, well, we'll see, because I've got guests from Brooklyn staying with us who tell me that there's no way that I can create a bagel that will rival a New York bagel. So
And you're going to
basically,
prove them wrong or what?
I'm going to try and prove them wrong. If not, I will poison them, and they'll never be able to tell how bad the bagel.
It'll be the last bagel they have. Well, listeners and watchers, we are back, and we have a special guest with us today. If you know us from 3Ps, you might recognize the name Aaron Chapman. He not only joined us once, he joined us twice in his professional capacity as a board-certified psychiatrist. In some of our episodes on 3Ps, we tackled some more serious conversations. One was on mental health, and one was on gender identity. And Aaron was kind enough to join us in a professional capacity to guide us through that. So thank you, Aaron, for joining us. Now you're the only person who has crossed over and been a guest on both podcasts.
Wow.
So I think applause is
I'm
yes.
honored and thank you for the invitation again.
Well, we have an ulterior motive, because this podcast is called Don and Gary Doing 60. But apparently we aren't the only ones who are doing 60.
Shut up.
There are others. And when we got together several months ago, we were actually in between our birthdays. I had just had my birthday. Yours was about to happen. And then just, Don's is a few weeks after yours. So we're all in that
Allegedly.
same era. But Don and I turned 60 a couple of years ago.
Allegedly.
So I'm going to just jump right into it. And, welcome to the club.
Well,
You are
thank you
now a
very
member
much.
of the 60s.
Yep, my birthday did happen, as they tend to, and I'm now 60.
And how did that go from that transition from 59 being one day and then you wake up the next morning and you're 60?
I think for me it was a non-event. And it's not the first time that I've done this. Maybe it's just something in my own personality, how I prepare myself for these things. But I've been thinking about myself, referring to myself as 60, at least for 6 months before the actual date. So when the actual date happened, it wasn't this big mental shift of, oh my God, I'm now 60. It just was the realization of something that I had been kind of incorporating, processing for quite some time, thinking about myself as being 60.
And did that happen with other milestone birthdays as well?
It has. And
Yeah.
it's not something that I choose to do. It's not, it's not like, okay, it's June now, you should really start thinking about yourself as 50 or 60. It's just kind of the way I've handled it.
Right. Because definitely there are people who, whatever the age is, have an issue with it, or thinking things are going to shift, and I've never had that issue. I think it's more in your attitude and how you live your life, and being positive about it, and the reality is that it happens to everyone, right? Everyone
That is true.
ages, right? So it's not like it's only happening to you. So that gives me solace.
I mean, it also helps that I made some wonderful plans around turning 60.
Right.
Doing some of my favorite things, like traveling and eating. So, I actually turned 60 in Paris, France.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Had a wonderful dinner that night, thanks to my husband in Paris, France.
Right.
So, planning, just some milestone activities around that date, I think were also helpful in terms of making it more enjoyable than, something to dread.
Yeah, I did something similar. For my 40th, I went to Europe. For my 50th, we went to Italy. and my 60th was a party here. But yeah, you celebrate it, and
Yeah.
and include your family and friends and loved ones. So
Well, Aaron, I have a question too, because if I could.
yeah.
It's 60 is it's just a number for all of us. It's literally just a frickin' number. Who cares? But it's interesting how much weight is put upon a number in our society, just in general.
Yeah.
Because it's like
Yeah.
one of those things where you're not really considered middle-aged anymore at 60 because we're not going to be around
Shut
to
up.
120. But I'm saying, it's interesting to lose that because, in many, we're considered old. Like a lot of people say, well, that's old. It's like, I don't feel old. I don't feel a whole lot different than I did in my 40s or 50s. So how about you? Are you feeling good? It seems like you're doing well, right?
I feel good. I'm doing well. If you're asking that, just sort of from a very practical, physical, angle. But I agree with you 100%. I mean, do I feel like a different person, energy-wise? Well, I mean, of course your interests change, but just how how I'm approaching, the world, how I'm approaching life. Do I feel that different, now having turned 60 than I did when I turned 40 or 50? I don't, I think I don't feel that different.
Good. 'Cause, I mean,
Maybe
again,
different perspectives.
but people tend to label numbers and label people with the number and make so many assumptions about, well, maybe you shouldn't be doing that. Maybe you shouldn't be going to Paris, or maybe you shouldn't be climbing Mount Everest, or maybe you shouldn't be taking, that long trip because you're X age. And it's like, I mean, there's got to be a way to dispel that, obviously, by living our lives positively with a lot of forward momentum. All those things are very important to do, but it's so many people just tend to label on it. It just seems like it's almost a burden to have that label on, and it's like having to disprove it in some way by being vital.
Yeah. And I can see where in my own mind that frame shifts over time. So, now I'll start having those thoughts about someone in their 80s. That person's in their 80s. That vacation's going to involve a lot of walking. Do you think? And I don't think of that so much, for someone in their 60s or for me in particular. But to have that awareness that, other people's frame of reference is quite different than where mine is right now.
Right.
I'm just thinking like the millennials that are around, because I've got a house guest who's my sister-in-law's daughter, who's in her very early 30s, and I ask her so many questions about this because they're very connected in a different way to social media or to how they process a lot of things, and it's a very interesting thing to get their perspective on what they think this is supposed to be. Luckily, she's very open-minded, and she sees how vital we are. So, I mean, I think it's important that also it's kind of good to get a perspective from a younger person. And of course, 30s, they're literally half our age. What were we doing in our 30s? And it's a very different world right now for them. So.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Gary, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. I just wanted to pick up on something that Aaron mentioned. He mentioned his husband. So are you still considered newlywed? How long ago did you get married?
Well, I'm not sure sure. Let's call us newlyweds. We got married in May, so it's been a little more than 6 months.
Okay.
So that is probably a change since the last time I was on one of your podcasts.
Yes.
And This is number 2 for me. It's number 1 for him.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a significant life change and probably, one that people don't necessarily associate with the age of 59.
Right. Yeah. But big year for you then, 2024. My goodness.
It was.
Wow.
But
so how long ago did you meet?
Darren and I met, we met right before the world shut down in 2020.
Oh, okay.
We did meet online. We had perhaps had 5 dates. We met in the end of January of 2020. But I had some vacation plans, and he had some vacation plans separate from each other with our own friends. And, so maybe by the time, they said, the world is shutting down and you shouldn't spend time with anyone outside of your household, we had maybe had 5 dates. Okay. And we even did have the conversation. We reflect with each other. We had the conversation of maybe we shouldn't do this anymore because, I don't know who you're seeing. You don't know who I'm seeing. We don't live in the same household. And then at a certain point, we stopped doing that. And we just thought, you know what, why don't we, I'm not seeing anyone, he's not seeing anyone. Why don't we just sort of figure this out as a bubble?
Yeah.
And so we became each other's bubble, really kind of not knowing each other very well, to be honest. But here we are, moving into 6 years later, and we're now newlyweds.
Wow. Well, congratulations. Although I did see you, after you got married, so
yes,
congratulations.
Yes.
Okay,
and
a couple of questions about
you.
that. Since you bubbled together, does that mean you cohabitated, or you were each other's bubble and you could intermingle that way?
We did not cohabitate.
Okay.
One of those weird things that happens, when you meet someone and start a relationship and get married at 59 is, ideally it's, two people who kind of have their settled life and their stable life outside of this coming together. And, I have my home, he has his home, and, we didn't give that up.
Okay. So did you share sourdough starters to start?
Yes.
Did you do that? Oh,
Don, that's getting kind of personal.
The answer to that question is yes.
Don.
And what was the other thing? Did you learn how to do cocktails together? Did you learn a lot of new mixology?
I'm not sure that we learned new cocktails,
Okay.
but we certainly had our share of cocktails.
That's good.
And we had our share of Zoom happy hours with his friends, Zoom happy hours with my friends.
Okay. And one more quick one, if I could, Gary. I'm sorry, because now I kind of...
I don't know.
Please.
It was...
It's called the Don and Gary Show.
Well, I'm trying to make it more Don and a little less Gary.
Oh,
Happy New Year. Just kidding. The other thing I was going to ask you, though, is you mentioned that you'd met each other on the apps. And I have to say, for us in our age group, that's not how it all started for us back in our 20s and 30s. The apps weren't around.
No.
And I'm going to say all the kids are doing the apps, and basically that's how they're doing the apps. So was it, because I mean, we used to go out. We would go to a happy hour, you'd go to a bar, a restaurant, whatever. You'd meet people that way. And the reason why I bring this up is because, do you remember cruising, what cruising was or is? When you're in a bar.
Do I remember?
Yes,
I remember?
Well, some of us are professionals. But, kind of something that came up and something I was reading about recently was that the art of that is gone now because there are actually, one, there are a lot fewer spaces for people to go and do that. Two, generations have shifted, and now the apps have basically taken over on how people can meet one another. So it's interesting how some of that intermingling and community has been taken away from us or changed. I won't say it's been taken away because there's still places to go, but it's not nearly the same game that it was 20 years ago.
I don't know. I've taken a different point of view on that.
Okay.
In that, cruising has changed. And now, what is what people are doing online? What is what
True.
people are doing on Grindr and Scruff? They're cruising. It's just
digitally.
It's just a different platform. It's
Absolutely.
It's a different way of essentially accomplishing the same goal.
Well, yeah, but cruising could also mean you're meeting someone. You're not necessarily going right down to. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it isn't, because sometimes actually I met my husband in a bar, making that thing back across from each other face to face, and that was 100 years ago. But now it seems like it's almost become so easy where you're just literally swiping through someone. You're going physicality first. Then you have to go through the process of what you did, getting to know each other a bit, and that's a little more challenging, I think, if you're doing it via phone. I'm not sure. I don't know how you did it specifically, but it's interesting how through the generations now it's changed dramatically. I do agree there's still spaces to go to and still places to go and meet people like that. It just seems the majority of what's happening now is app driven.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I mentioned that this marriage is number 2 for me, and I had been married for 14 years prior to that, and then kind of emerged from that relationship, recently divorced, into a completely different world of how people meet, how people mingle. What's the purpose of the bars? Why do people go to the bars versus the purpose of the apps? And I ran into a friend, a bar friend, after I'm emerging from my last relationship. Someone who I used to know from the bars, before my first relationship. And he was telling me, and he was right, that, the purpose of the bars have changed. That people don't go to the bars for the most part to meet. They don't go to the bars to hook up because you have the apps for that. People go to bars to meet up with their friends, hang out, debrief their week. And, and I think that's, I'm not going to say that that's 100% accurate, but, I think there's a lot of accuracy to that. People go to, the bars here in San Francisco mostly with friends to hang out with their friends, and it's not, a cruising scene.
Right.
Like it used to be.
So I had a question for the two of you, since you are both married. So, Don, I'm going to have you do some math. How old were you when you got married? I know the answer, but I just want to see if you do.
Okay. Okay, it was very recently, so it was a couple years ago. So I was 60.
Yes, good. Good answer. Yes, you're
I had to wait
correct.
for Gary to confirm that because I wasn't sure.
Yes.
So yes,
Yeah, it was 2023.
Thank you. See, if I rely on Gary for all of these pertinent dates because I don't remember a darn thing. But but we'd also been together 22 years prior to that. So basically, we
Right.
caved because our families were saying, "Come on, what's your problem? Get together already."
Put a ring on it.
Exactly.
No, so my question to the two of you, because Don, you were 60, Aaron, you're 59. So I didn't realize Aaron had been married before. How old were you when you got married the first time?
35.
Okay. Which, what I was initially going to say was, on average, it's like late 20s to mid 30s is when, guys usually getting married. Well,
Right.
not all of us. But I digress. So the decision at 59 to 60 to get married, just kind of walk me through that. I mean, it's like, how did that go? What is that like? I mean, was that an easy decision? Or, because at that point, in Don's case, yes, you were together with your husband for 20 plus years. But for someone who's single like me, it's like you're set in your ways. So at late 50s, early 60s, say I'm getting married. That's a shift, obviously. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up.
Was it? I can't say it was an easy decision. I think there were some practical elements to making that decision, and as well as impractical reasons for making that decision. Having found someone who I love and who I want to spend my life with. When I say practical, there are all kinds of practical financial considerations in terms of setting myself up for retirement and setting ourselves up for if we are planning on doing this together. There are some elements of being married that stabilize that for you. So that's the stuff that was completely practical. I think on the impractical part, I'd already done this before, and I think I probably entered it with, a little more fear and trepidation than Darren did, and this is his first marriage, and I think it's something he wanted to accomplish in his life, to be a married man. I kind of felt like I'd already done that. I wasn't opposed to doing it again, but perhaps entered it with a little more trepidation and fear.
And Don, in your case, well, you said that it was
I
your
was
family
strong-armed
in case, but
But no, on the practical side too, it's important because as Aaron mentioned, there's a matter of combined property. There's the legality of these things. We've just actually completed the first two steps of our living trusts and wills together. We own quite a bit of combined property, and then there's all of the other medical reasons that you'd want someone to have access to you and to your health and your care afterwards. Should, as we get older, we don't know what the future is going to bring us. So on the practical side, to Aaron's point, I mean, it made perfect sense to do this because I don't want there to be any question about anyone else being involved with how my care is given to me in a certain stage of life or if something changes drastically. And that's the practical reality that we dealt with. Plus the fact that Mom, everyone started to give us a bad time about not being married. So that was the other side of it.
that you were living in sin, is that it?
Sin, yes, constant sin.
Well, that's your whole life story. Moving on.
Yes.
One question we ask our guests that are in the club, is there something that, advice that you would give your younger self, and you can pick whatever age you want, be it 25, be it 30, 19, whatever, with all the wisdom that you have collected to date?
I was thinking about that question, and there's so many different ways to answer it, but because we're talking about turning 60, I can imagine, just the sheer horror that I must have experienced at the age of 30, contemplating the idea that someday I would be 60.
Who'd have thought?
And the reality, and you'll even hear people say that, the gay community has no place for people, once they're, 40 and above. And finding that that's just not true, and things change. I don't approach life, nor do I approach the gay community and my involvement in the gay community at 60, as I did in my early 30s. But this idea that, you're of no value, as someone, in your 50s, in your 60s, in the gay community. Well, how are you judging that? Are you judging, your value as someone, taking off their shirt at a circuit party? But, if any, I feel very much, having a place in the gay community. It's a 60-year-old place.
Right.
But that's there. And, and as I said, just imagining the sheer horror that I must have experienced as a 30-year-old, just contemplating the idea of someday I will turn 60 and I will have no value. And, I hate to say that, okay, I'm now married, but even someone in my, mid to late 50s, the idea that, no one would desire you. Even that has no truth to it.
Right. It's true. Don, do you want to go on to anything else?
Well,
or I will
you
continue.
mentioned quite a few things there too, because I think you'd mentioned, I was going to say, have you and your husband talked about next steps when it comes to this age? Everyone is also pointing towards retirement, whatever that looks like, or not retiring, or continuing their careers, or also starting to think more proactively about what the next thing will be. Now, all of us have different agendas. And perhaps you want to keep practicing forever and never stop it. Or do you have an end date? Or have you even just thought about that yet? I don't mean an end date, final end date. I just mean an end date to work.
Thank you.
Professional
although I
ending.
probably have one of those too.
I think we all have one of those. We just don't know which one it is or when it is. So, but
Right.
have you thought about what the next step might look like?
something that, is interesting about 60 for me. And I'm going to think about 60 almost more as a decade as opposed to a birthday or a year. Mm-hmm. But on one hand, people say, "Oh, what does it feel like to have turned 60?" There's something liberating about turning 60. There's something liberating about being in my 60s, because I think this is a decade for many people, and I think it will be for me, of change and liberation to change. I think we are given license to make significant shifts in our career or to end our career. And I think most people do that in their 60s. Mm-hmm. And I have to say that approaching 60 for me was a combination of, I was there an element of dread, like, oh my God, I'm going to be 60? Yeah, yes, there was. Was there an element of excitement that I'm going to be in my 60s and that's going to afford me, at least from a societal perspective, certain flexibility and freedom. And so to answer your question, yes, we are talking about what is retired life going to look like. When are we going to when am I going to pull the trigger on that? What will life look like after that? Does retirement mean a complete cessation of work? Or does it mean, and I think this is some of what I'm looking at personally, does it mean more flexibility in terms of how I approach work, at least for some period of time? No longer working a job with a boss, but maybe doing some teaching, some consulting, some things that are a little more, self-driven. And so I, in some ways, welcomed 60 because of, and it's not that you can't make these decisions at 55. They're just more societally sanctioned to say, I'm making these decisions, making this change in my 60s. Mm-hmm. And there's a freedom that comes with that.
I have also seen a lot of people reinvent themselves too, because people are also saying, with perhaps not retiring completely, but saying, okay, I'm going to consult in my profession going forward and pick and choose when I work, if they have that luxury, which is wonderful, because then they can also devote time to other things that they find more rewarding, or reinvent themselves to take some more paths towards their career that they hadn't taken in the past. People are going back to school. People are joining organizations. People are not seeing it as a stopping point, as you say, but actually a stepping off point and a diving board up into something new, a new pool of something else, which is very exciting to me, because I think, all of us have experienced some form of reinvention, or either been forced, because there's also people are laid off at a certain age. They have to make decisions. Do I continue after I've been laid off from my job of 20 some odd years or whatever? Because there is a lot of that based on age and also salaries, where people are actually being, taken out of their job or workplace, and they're changing. So I think I agree with you. There's a lot of positivity out of this. You can make something really great out of a negative experience, like being laid off from your job, to actually take a new path. And I think that's a different perspective that maybe our parents' generations didn't have, because you stopped working at 65 or whatever the age was at the time. You literally just stopped. You got a pension, and you just golfed, or whatever it was.
Because that's what people did.
Yeah.
That's what people did.
And I don't see that so much anymore.
I look at it as if you are contemplating at this age, what have I done? Have I accomplished the things that I wanted to accomplish? I had a dream to do X, and I just turned 60 and I haven't done that. So how, if you really want to do it, you got to do it, strike while the iron is hot. And maybe at 60 is when you are more stable in a lot of things in your life, so you're able to maybe, if it's a risk, take that risk. So you don't look back and say, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that.
I will share with you an ongoing discussion, that Darren and I have, and that I have with friends as well. And that is, some of the potential pitfalls that we see around us. Gay men generally don't play golf, but we do have a tendency to day drink. And so how to, create a retirement and a life after retirement that doesn't devolve into meeting up with friends and day drinking on a daily basis. And, I have to say that that's actually a real fear. Because it's something I see around me, in terms of, gay retirees, especially, gay retirees who go to gay retirement destinations, like, Palm Springs, Puerto Vallarta, that, I'm hoping that retired life looks somewhat more meaningful than taking up day drinking.
Yeah.
Golf is unlikely. I've never played golf in my life.
Pickleball. It's all about the pickleball.
Pickleball's a possibility.
You're active. You can actually hold a glass of wine while you're doing it because it's very civilized. So you can.
It's permitted.
It is, but I agree with you. I think it's important that people don't fall into that. I wouldn't say trap, but into that trope maybe of thinking that that's what you do. Because in Palm Springs, for example, where we also spend time, there are many groups of older people that are getting together that are called prime timers of the desert. And guess what they do? At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they're drinking for a few hours.
Ooh, they're starting late at 3 o'clock. Wow.
But I think it's important. That's why it's so good to get into good routines or habits now or earlier than this. So you have those things. If you're interested in exercise, if you like to walk, if you want to start biking, if you want to play pickleball, even golf. I mean, again, not many people play golf, but it's something that you're actually doing. What we're doing with this podcast, for example, I intend to take this further past, for years to come in some version or form. And I'm learning new things. I'm learning how to podcast. I'm learning how to edit. I'm learning how to work with new apps and programs. So I'm actually very excited about being stimulated mentally on new things to learn and do. Because I was never adept at technology, much like our generation, I guess.
And Don, you also mentioned earlier, taking classes. Maybe you want to explore your artistic endeavors that you never got a chance to do. Go to the local universities. All kinds of options available for you. So you can definitely find things to do that don't involve sitting at a bar stool.
And that's a big concern for a lot of people.
I think in the last podcast where I joined you, we talked about it would have been my partner at the time, but having a place in Puerto Vallarta, and giving some consideration to at least living part-time, if not full-time, in Mexico, and meeting up with people there, establishing friendships there, which we are already doing, and just how many different volunteer opportunities there are for Americans and Canadians who live there, to support the community around them. And, so those are things that I'd very much, not only would I want to be involved in, but I'd almost feel that I need it to create purpose in a post-retirement life.
So you've been going there pretty regularly for a while now, or is it a newer destination for you?
Well, it's a place that I loved to go to occasionally, probably for the last 25 years.
Oh, okay.
But the idea that, hey, this could potentially be a retirement destination, and as such, it's not just about going there on vacation and just having a great time and coming back, but it's about meeting people there, establishing relationships there, learning about volunteer opportunities in the community and organizations that are supporting the community around Puerto Vallarta, That's something I would say perhaps of the last 3 years.
Okay.
And it's a different approach, to going to Puerto Vallarta. It's not about, well, what are the restaurants we're going to hit up? What are the bars we're going to hit up? What are the shows we're going to see? It's, who are the friends that we're going to get together with?
And so you ended up buying a place there. How was that since you've been going for so long, that seemed like a logical decision to make, or
Completely illogical. No. Oh. No. There was a fantasy element to it, to be sure. Now, having done it, was it a mistake? Oh, absolutely not. But was it always just this well thought out part of my financial plan? No, there was a fantasy element to it, to having a place in Puerto Vallarta. And that's been realized. And ask me in 10 years, how did we use that opportunity? And I'll tell you, was it a really good idea?
So
Or
when
perhaps
Don and
not.
Gary Doin 70 comes out, we'll call you back. And
Yes,
right?
please do.
Well, by then we will have been invited to stay at the house in Puerto Vallarta, and then maybe we'll record from there, Don.
And of course you are invited, and of course we can record. My Wi-Fi works great.
Here's the thing, though. It's forward momentum. There is, with that, I always feel like our lives need to move forward, and having a place to look forward to going to every season or whenever you want to, or on a whim. What a wonderful gift that is, to be able to just jump on a plane, because it's a few hours from L.A. or from San Francisco,
Few
right?
hours away.
Yeah, so it's an easy trip, but also, as you said, establishing there's a whole new environment that you're going to have that's away from the city. That's a very different perspective. So I love the idea of that, because it just opens up so much opportunity to do and stimulate your mind and your health and everything. So forward momentum to me, and it's, like I said, something to look forward to, which I think is also important for all of us in this age or stage of our lives.
And I think something to be said for gay retirement destinations. I have friends who have moved to Palm Springs, and I think they share this experience with me. This experience that I'm having as I'm transitioning into Puerto Vallarta is most of the gay men who live there came from somewhere else. And there's a hunger to establish community. And it's a different experience that I have when I'm there, and when I talk to my friends who've gone to Palm Springs, than I'm having here in San Francisco, in that you have a whole community of people that are recently arrived. They left wherever it was that they came from, and there's a hunger to meet new friends, establish community, and I find it easier to meet new people there than I'm experiencing here. And I have to ask myself how much of that is about San Francisco, maybe how much of that is about me. And I don't quite know, but it does feel that there is something to be said for this idea of the retirement destination.
You also
Yes,
mentioned
interesting when you say that.
community. So you mentioned community too, because I think that's something that we're establishing in different parts of the country, Palm Springs, PV, other parts of the country also. But one thing I'm seeing a little bit more of is the idea of communal living. I know that's not what we're talking about specifically, but
Right.
communal living for people growing older, straight, gay, whatever. There's a lot more of a search for that, and I've seen a lot more social media based on it, showing where people need to go to group together and perhaps spend time in their elder years together as more of a community. So I think community is actually a big thing. You mentioned it on a broad spectrum with where you're looking at in PV and Palm Springs, but I agree, we're all looking for another community to build. Gary,
Yeah, what I was going to say was tied into that is that as I've gotten older, a lot of my friends, for one reason or another, have moved away. So my core group of friends has kind of thinned out. And so it came up on something I was watching the other day. How easy is it to make new friends as you get older. And yes, I do a lot of volunteer work, so I meet a lot of people that. But I don't necessarily hang out with them outside of when we're together doing our volunteer work, right? So I have my neighbor friends that we try and get together once in a while, and then folks that I volunteer with. But I'm in an office at home. I work by myself, so there's no work relationships I can hang out with all day and do something at night. So that's a challenge I've had where, because I'm single, I don't like going to the bars, never did, right? Unless, as Aaron said, I'm meeting with friends, okay? But in my elder years, Don, when I was younger, that's a different story.
I was going to say, we've been to a few happy hours in our time, but okay.
It's like, wait,
Yes.
I've seen you, Gary. I know I've seen you.
Well, allegedly, yes. I used to go to the bars a lot. But I don't, unless someone's visiting and they want to go hit the old haunts, fine. But that's the challenge I have now so I've actually looked at, but they're super expensive. Look at those, retirement communities where you can be around other people your age and, and then intermix with them. But it's not cheap.
Nope.
So I'm kind of at that age where like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I'm looking at, if I retire at 67, that's 5 years from now, and yes, I can continue living here and doing my volunteer work, but the herd is thinning, so it's
Well, that is so much, what has been my San Francisco experience over the last decade.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of that is unique to San Francisco. I think some of it is unique to the Bay Area. But, as I was approaching 60, now being 60, and, I have friends that probably range from, 10 years older than me, 10 years younger than me. No one was talking about doing retirement in San Francisco. Everyone was talking about, when I retire, I will go to. And then it started to happen, Gary. I have friends who it was on their bucket list to move to France. They moved to France. Other friends who just felt priced out of the area in retirement and moved to Santa Fe. Other friends who, felt priced out and moved to, Sacramento. And that's accessible, but it's not like, hey, what are you doing tonight? Should we have dinner? It's not that accessible.
right.
And then, of course, a number of friends who have moved to Palm Springs.
Yeah.
As many gay men in California do post-retirement. So everyone was talking about their retirement. No one was talking about staying in the Bay Area.
Right.
Because of price. And then asking the question, are we still getting our money's worth staying here?
Right.
It's not the same place that many of us moved to. And
Right. Those are all the things that are going through my head. And people have said, well, why don't you move to X or retire to this? Like, why would I move to a place where I don't know anyone when I have establishment here, my family's here, I have friends here. I would not want to pick up and move somewhere else just because it's financially better. I mean, that's one way you can look at it, but I don't want to do it based on that.
And there's nothing wrong with
I'm
living
kind of
in the
at a
city
crossroads.
forever. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
True.
I love San Francisco. I hadn't really. It wasn't my first choice to move here to the beach. I mean, the beach, but I mean, it wasn't my first choice to leave San Francisco because we'd been here forever, and I loved living there. We loved where we lived, loved our home, loved the family that was there. We loved all the friends that we had. But to Gary's point, since I'm one of the herd that thinned out to the left. I was one of those people among many that left for whatever reason. But it's also very similar because, as I said, I have house guests here from Brooklyn. They're never going to leave New York. They are never going to leave Brooklyn. And I say that adamantly because I already talked with them about that because, it's a different thing. Having people who also have perhaps rented their whole lives, had never had to purchase a home or made the commitment to a home, the financial costs, the tension of keeping that mortgage payment going, all those things. So they're a little more used to paying rent or a higher rent, but they're never going to leave. Gary, stay in San Francisco the whole time. Your family is there. Your core is there. We can always jump on a plane and come see you. It's like
That's true.
Happen.
Yeah. I mean, luckily it's close enough that yes, you can do that. As is Puerto Vallarta. It's only like 3.5 hours for me.
He's pushing that one.
3.5 hours.
That's right. Come on, I've done it a couple times. So, change the subject. One of our little segments, if you will, in the club is ain't nobody got time for that. So we think about, you've been on this earth for 60 years, so you've lived a life, and so looking back, or just the things around you at age 60, what is it that like, what? I'm not putting up with that anymore, or I don't have time for that anymore. Take it away.
That's a hard one for me to answer, because I think in some ways I've become more patient. I'd like to think I've become more patient with age than perhaps I was in my 30s and 40s.
Okay.
And I think the core of your question is about patience, and what are the things that I've become impatient of. And of course, there are things that I'm impatient of. But I think, for the most part, I feel myself becoming a more patient person. And I think that that's something that I've strived for. Because I think there have probably been times that I've been quite impatient. But things that are wasting my time, I think, are things that I feel limited patience for, or this I don't have time for that. I was just having, I'm 60, was having a conversation with a friend of mine in his 70s about, how much garbage is on Facebook these days. And what a waste of time Facebook feels like it's becoming, because it's just all of this, suggested for you material that has absolutely nothing to do with any interest I've ever expressed online. And ads. And so, that felt, and it felt like both of us were like, I don't have time for this, and both of us were giving consideration to, if it wasn't for the fact it's how we keep up with our friends, that maybe we would just throw it away. But I guess that's part of their algorithm in knowing that we're very unlikely to throw it away. So, that's just a recent conversation about, something that, I don't know, maybe the younger people are tolerating this. Maybe the younger people are appreciating this. This suggested for you material that's completely out of the blue. For us, it was like, this is wasting my time.
Let me add to that.
No, my take on it was, go ahead.
No, Gary, go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say, my take on that question was, from my perspective, was when I was younger, I'd be the type that I wouldn't say anything. If something bothered me, I just, kept my mouth shut. But as I've gotten older, I'm like, what? That's not right, what you just said or you just did. So I'm more likely to speak up now, because if I waited around for someone to say something, everyone's eyes would divert, they'd look down, that they might be tisking under their breath, but they wouldn't do or say anything.
Right.
And that's where I would say, what, that's just not right. You can't talk to him like that. You can't do that to her, whatever the situation is. I just felt like someone needed to stand up for this person or for myself in whatever the situation was. So that's kind of where that ain't nobody got time for that came from. Just as like, I'm older, I'm wiser, to have more insurance.
To Wanda.
Exactly. So, to Wanda. Don, I cut you off. You were going to say something.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, when it comes to social media, that's something I'm really interested to see how it evolves, because I don't have time for the toxic rhetoric that takes place on almost every social media page. So I don't have time for that, and I don't engage. I'm actually even considering whether or not Facebook is a medium I would use, other than showing pictures of fuzzy doggies and unicorns and saying hi to my friends, because there's just so much other toxicity in there, which is what it was meant for originally, and that can be said for most social media platforms. The one question I did ask my 30-year-old guest here was, like, do you ever think the younger generations would turn away in some form from social media? And she said, I don't think so. TikTok's been shut off today. So that's interesting that took place. But again, who knows what the future of that's going to be because of the message that's happening, what's happening tomorrow. But I think I don't really have time for all the horrible negativity that spirals from political discussions that are showing a picture of a fuzzy kitty, and then all of a sudden it turns into a political discussion and spirals out of nowhere.
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
have time for
exactly.
that. No more. So
Yeah. Although, have you seen mention of people turning to another
Absolutely.
platform called Blue Sky?
Absolutely.
Is that called Blue Sky?
There's a lot of people that
Yeah.
are taking a look at that. Who knows where that will spiral into?
Well, I was going to
have
say,
an
but then
account
eventually
on
won't
Blue
that turn
Sky.
into the new Facebook?
What were you saying, Aaron? Sorry.
And then become...
Yeah, no, I have an account on Blue Sky. I haven't
Oh.
quite figured out how to make it interesting, how to set it up so that it captures my attention.
Okay.
Which maybe means their algorithms aren't as good as the Facebook algorithms.
Okay.
Yeah, stick to fuzzy kitties and unicorns. I mean, it's just the way to do it. Or saying hi to your friends from Puerto Vallarta. Guess where I am today? You know.
Exactly, right? Like and just, like and subscribe. That's all we say.
Aaron, if you
See,
can ask you
we've
one.
done a good job of identifying these things that I am intolerant of, and that I have no time for at 60.
So, Aaron,
Exactly.
if you were a teacher, maybe you are an educator, if you could teach a subject or an age group, what might that be?
Well, I
It's a tough
am
one.
a teacher.
Oh, sorry.
It's a side thing that I do. And, I'm currently teaching psychiatry, or what they call behavioral medicine, to a class of physician assistant students in Oakland. And this is something I've done probably for the last 7 years. One semester out of the year, one evening a week. And I enjoy that. And so, what are the age of those students? They're 30s and 40s, and I think, that's an age that I like. Now the question is, what if I just kind of went outside of my professional life and wanted to teach something else? Political science might be an interesting one.
Okay.
I would probably have to do some of my own self-education before I, wanted to teach other people. But, I am someone who's kind of outside of psychiatry been politically minded. Politics, public policy, that's probably, not only probably, in reality, that's part of what drew me to psychiatry, or community-based psychiatry as a field, is there are few parts of medicine where you have that intersection between medicine, treatment, politics, and public policy. That changed 5 years ago, where our infectious disease specialists became very political for a few moments, during the COVID-19 pandemic, and they got to experience that interface between medicine and public policy in a way that I've been experiencing my entire career. But honestly, that is one of the things that drew me to psychiatry, and especially public psychiatry. Is how it exists on that interface with politics. And so if I were going to let go of the psychiatry piece, maybe the politic piece would be something that I'd want to teach.
I think that's incredibly important, considering most people don't know how the House and Senate work. Most people don't know how we build laws or pass them. I think it's incredibly valuable for people, if there was an interest in it for most people, to learn how government actually works and how we can affect it to work for us, as opposed to just talking about it on Facebook. and not being knowledgeable.
And where does conservatism come from? Where does liberalism come from? You know, are we born that way? What are the life experiences that, you know, that might push someone in one direction versus another direction?
All righty, Mr. Pfeiffer, how are we doing?
We're
Are we
good. I think
Do we
we're
have more
good.
questions?
I have some stupid ones, but I'm not going to bore.
Oh, come on, I like stupid.
Okay, good. If someone were to play you in a movie, who would it be?
Oh, geez.
See?
Blanking on his name. But
Okay, give me the movies
who
then.
was the actor that played Dr. Frankenfurter in
Tim Curry.
Oh, Tim Curry.
Tim Curry? People told me from time to time
Okay.
that I resemble Tim Curry, and I'm not sure. I've never quite taken that as a compliment. But, but let's go with Tim Curry.
But no, I think, Gary, are we good? Do you think we got it?
I think it's good. We had a really good conversation. So thank you, Aaron,
Thank you, Don.
for
Thank
joining
you,
us
Gary.
yet again.
Yes.
Our superstar guest. Again, welcome to the club, and look forward to seeing you here somewhere in the city at some point.
We'll make that happen.
Alrighty. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Talk to you later.
And Don, good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Hey everybody, it's Don from Don and Gary Doing 60. Unfortunately, for our closing segment, we have lost the audio and the visual feed that was originally recorded with both of us, but Gary has graciously and magnanimously allowed me to record this one on my own. So we wanted to thank Aaron for joining us. You were great, Aaron. Please come back and join us. You're welcome anytime. Watchers and viewers of the podcast, thank you for joining us at Don and Gary Doing 60. We hope you enjoyed spending quality time with us. Join us next time as we navigate the world at this age. Don't forget, you can always find us at Apple Podcasts and Spotify, on Instagram at Don and Gary Doing 60, and of course on YouTube on Pfeiffer Pod under Don and Gary Doing 60. If you'd like to contact us, email us at donandgarydoing60@gmail.com. Thanks for your patience. Sorry for the technical difficulties. They'll probably happen again, but we'll see you next time. We have lots of episodes coming, and they're in the can and ready to go. Talk to you soon. Bye.